to another edition of our Lean Celebrity Interview here at Cal Poly. So I am Eric Olsen, and I'm the professor, or one of the professors in this class. And we've got our esteemed guest here today, Jordan Ticktin. Jordan is a Cal Poly grad, graduated. He was sitting in this class or some version of this class um, not too awful long ago. But it was a pleasure to have him in this class. And he's got on some big things, and he is now working for JPL, Jet Propulsion Labs, and trying to do some, let's see. I'm trying to think of, like, how to describe what you're doing. You're making the organization better, and you're doing some fantastic things, Jordan. So welcome to this edition of our celebrity interview. Thanks for being here.
Always good to see you, Dr. O, and you too, Wes.
All right. Hey, Jordan, tell us a little bit about, and we said, you're not only were you're an ex-student, but you're a friend, and you've kind of kept in contact over all these years. Tell us a little bit, like, technically, like, what is your job right now, and maybe a little bit about what its relationship is to Lean and Six Sigma.
Yeah, so I am a quality assurance engineer at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. JPL is the NASA center that specializes in all the deep space robots. So some Earth science orbiters that do climate change research, Mars rovers. I'm working on our next Jupiter mission called Europa Clipper. This is the moon Europa behind me. Um, and so I do quality assurance. Basically, when we do these deep space robots, there's no way to fix something after you launch it. So we have to make sure everything's built right the first time so that it then works millions or even billions of miles away. There's no tow trucks on Mars for us to call, unfortunately. AAA just ignores our calls. So I specifically am assigned right now to the Europa Clipper mission, which is launching to Jupiter in October. I'm very excited. It's going to be trying to learn more about this ocean moon, see if there's possibly some life there. And my job is related to certifying all the hardware on the spacecraft for flight effectively. So I am one of thousands of people working on this mission. It is far from just me. But I have been helping with us running all these hardware delivery reviews, we call them. Basically, these big meetings with these big checklists for all the batteries and the solar array and the computers and everything that goes on it to make sure it's all actually done before it goes on the spacecraft. And we have the certification paperwork proving that everything's ready to go and launched to space and we haven't missed anything. And so it's partially,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. No, Jordan, it's nice. And we're chatting a little bit before we sort of jumped on that I've had the pleasure of, you've been our celebrity interview several times in the past. So over the years, it's kind of an evolving idea about, like, what lean is and how it sort of applies in your particular case. And we've talked
Yes.
before about the idea that, in a lot of the stuff that developed the whole field of Lean and Six Sigma was on some repetitive manufacturing processes like car manufacturing and stuff. And you're doing hundreds of units a day or thousands a day or whatever. And, you just alluded to the fact is you kind of got this one shot to get it right sort of situation. And so people would say, well, maybe lean doesn't apply so much. But I always argue it kind of does. And you kind
Yes.
of, we've talked about this before. So what about, like, when you've only got one shot, or you're doing like one big thing that has to stick? Like, what's different about that?
Yeah. And so as you alluded to, my thinking on this has evolved over the past few years
Mhm.
as I've been working on it. And so I will say that lean applies in some ways, it doesn't apply in other ways. And then the third category, the one that I have been evolving on, is it applies in ways I hadn't thought it did.
Oh,
So
interesting.
there's some things that just obviously don't apply. So when you're making just one of a thing, inventory, reducing inventory is not a big deal, right? I'm going to make one, there will be a testing unit. We'll hopefully have two spares in case we break something. And that's about it. Having overproduction of inventory is not a concern for us.
Hmm.
Um, On the other hand, there are operations that we do over and over and over again. So yes, every single design is going to be completely unique. But for example, if you have a piece of metal, the idea of doing the dimensional inspection on it to make sure it's the same size, while the inspection itself, the drawings will be different, the idea of doing the inspection is going to happen over and over and
Hmm.
over again on every single part we
Right.
build. These reviews that I'm conducting, I can't automate these reviews because we have to make sure that this one computer is built perfectly, and then we launch our little baby into space, right?
Right.
But we held over 100 of these reviews for 100 different assemblies on the project. So my process of how I hold these reviews, of how I track the over 1,000 action items that have come out of it, that is very much something I can automate and try to make more lean. So there's some ways it applies, and some ways it doesn't.
It's interesting. I don't know if you saw us, we were working with like a Trello board, which is, we use it for a huddle for the
Mm-hmm.
class to make sure that we're doing all the things that we're supposed to do. And it's kind of our, sort of a living checklist for us. It occurs to me, do you use huddle boards at JPL, or do you just walk in a meeting with a list and everybody knows the list, or does everybody get to see the list, or is it just yours? How's that work?
You know, I will never make any statement for we do X at JPL because there's so many different things and so many different types of groups at JPL that even if I've never heard of it, chances are somebody's doing it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But in terms of these meetings, we're usually using PowerPoint and Word oftentimes. We've now started making these custom internal internet-based tools so that we can do things more efficiently. But yeah, I mean, you always start with Word, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and,
Yeah.
a lot of that is, sort of a lean concept. Well, I don't know if it's a lean concept, but just keeping it simple, right? Using the most basic things that you
Yes.
can, right, to get the
Yes.
job done, right?
Especially if we're only going to be using it on one project at a time, right? Or one project ever, possibly, because maybe things will have changed a decade later by the time we do the next project. You,
A
there's some
decade
time that
later.
it's so some projects are small and they have a couple year turnaround. The biggest projects, my mission is one of the biggest projects we've ever done. We're talking about once a decade.
Yeah.
And they cost in the billions of dollars. It's a very different scale than the small projects.
So Jordan, I want to make sure that our students get a chance to ask you
Mhm.
questions and things, and beyond the scope of what we just sort of talked about, but working at JPL, what's lean about this, and uh
Yeah.
and it's just things. So I'd invite students to maybe type a question in the chat if you're online, or raise your hand, and we'll get you into the conversation. I think Wes and Bruno, you guys are good with spotlighting somebody else in if they're online, or the class cam or something like that.
And real quick before the questions, you asked about how lean relates. One other thing, one thing that is critical for us um, is schedule. So when you do planetary exploration, um, at a normal company, when you're running behind and you have to go talk to your vice president and have them get really pissed at you that you're losing all the shareholder value and yada yada yada, and everyone gets really mad, and then you can push the deadline if you're running late.
Right.
When I go to explore to other planets, we literally launch when the planets align. I launch based on the laws of physics. There is nobody for me to argue with if we're falling behind. There doesn't matter how stressed you are, you just figure it out. And so we build in a lot of schedule margin and stuff like that. But when you combine an immovable end date with we've never built this before and we don't know if it's going to fit together right or if we even designed it
Yeah.
correctly, um, there's again certain parts of lean that just won't apply correctly. Like I can't do forecasting as well on some parts of that. But on the other hand, the idea of like especially poka-yoke, like preventing errors from happening is beyond critical because it takes so much time to clean up after a mistake, clean up after something has broken. It's so much better to always take the extra time to, we call it go slow now to go fast later. Always make sure everything's done right before you're at the point of no return and oops, I just ate up a whole bunch of my very shrinking margin to fix a problem that didn't need to happen in the first place.
Yeah.
Anyway,
All
there are
right.
questions.
Yeah, there are questions. So, hey, Paxton, are you? Can you jump on and give us your question? Can somebody find Paxton? Raise your hand or something so that the Bruno can sort of find you, so we get you spotlighted and join Jordan and I online here. I see your question here. How do you get connected with JPL? So that's the question. There we go. Yay! It worked. So magical. Go ahead, Paxton. Ask the question.
Paxton wants to know how you got connected with JPL.
Cal Poly Career Fair.
Interesting.
I actually got all of my internships off of either Cal Poly Career Fair or the Polypack Club. Because the thing as an IT major, I was an IT major, now you're ITP. And I was probably unusual even for an IT major. Dr. O can confirm, but
Yeah, it's a
you're
little different.
you're an odd duck. You don't fit cleanly into most packages unless you're a packaging major. And so most times I submitted my resume a place, they would have no idea what was happening and they'd kind of throw it away. But one thing we do learn in IT is how to be a glue between different kinds of people and how to do sales. I wasn't interested in selling consumer products, but I learned how to sell myself. And so I would go to career fair, I would go to the packaging club meeting or what have you. And when I'd talk to someone, they'd go, oh, that's interesting. And then we'd have an interesting conversation. And every single one of my 7 internships I found that way.
Yeah.
Cool. We have one person in class. So thank you, Paxton. It's actually the same one. Oh, never mind. It was actually the same one. Okay.
Well, let's see. I think we've got another questioner. So let's see. Brendan, jump on there. Brendan, ask your question.
Oops. My question is, how long have you worked at JPL, and where did you work beforehand? But what was the most of your 7 internships? What was the most valuable to you?
Yeah, and to be clear, you don't need to do 7 internships. Nobody does that. That's insane. I've never heard of anyone else doing that. Don't feel like you need to do that. So I started at JPL full-time 1 week into the pandemic. So March 2020. I started here as an intern, though, in summer of 2016. Half of the internships were all in my group here. I just kept going because I kept not graduating, and then went for a master's and then kept not graduating. I also had an internship at SpaceX. I had an internship at a local machine shop. I had an internship for Procter & Gamble doing packaging in Ohio. And so I didn't actually do any other full-time jobs. This is my first full-time job. I started here immediately out of grad school. I also did my master's at Cal Poly, but that was in industrial engineering, not in ITP.
Yep. All right, Brendan, thanks. Yeah, thanks for the question. All right. Do we have other questions for Jordan here?
Yeah, we got one in class.
Okay, go for it.
We've been talking about problems. Exactly what is the problem you guys are trying to solve?
Getting a little philosophical. I like it.
Yeah, no, philosophical is a big part of it. As JPL or as NASA, yeah. So our mission statement is to explore the universe for the betterment of humanity. It kind of comes down to that. It's a pretty cool place to work. It's a nonprofit, so it's not trying to solve a certain product for people. It's a whole bunch of different things. It's to explore because we fundamentally think that's important to do as human beings. It's to produce scientific research that betters who we are. It's to learn more about ourselves and the universe and our place within it. It's to do outreach and public education to inspire the public and to form connections with the rest of the world and other countries. It's to promote the creation of a private space economy. You've heard of SpaceX? Well, SpaceX exists because NASA has funded a whole bunch of it to do things like resupply the ISS. And we've helped grow a lot of these private companies doing amazing things. It exists to do a lot of things, but fundamentally, we're here because we are explorers.
So I have a question. So
Sure.
so that's the JPL mission statement. What gets you stoked about it? Like, let's start with why. Why does it get you out of bed in the morning?
I fundamentally think that exploring space is the most exciting thing there is. I've had people ask me before in interviews, what do you like about space? Why do you like it so much? And that is the one question that I do not know how to answer in an interview, because I fundamentally cannot understand the concept of not being this excited about exploring space. It is just the most interesting, the most exciting, the most impressive, amazing thing there is in my mind. You look up at the night sky and you look at all the stars and you realize that almost every star out there probably has one or more planets around it. Maybe there's people living on those other planets. There's all these crazy things out there in the universe we just don't know about. I've held things in my hands that are now on the surface of Mars. That's not something you get to do in most jobs. And just, I get to come to work every day and play with a bunch of space geeks to go learn more about the universe. And I still can't believe that people pay me to do this.
Hashtag deep. I like it.
So Jordan, we've burned through some pretty good time here. We didn't burn through a decade, but you know, it was a good conversation. I'm going to go ahead and try to wrap up here. And as you know, every time we wrap up these interviews, you know, there's one question we ask, and you've got let's see, I guess was 81 the number that we counted in the engagement tracker, total number of students, sort of at present and whatnot.
Yeah, we're a little shy of that now, but yeah, 81-ish.
81-ish. So you got a bunch of these young minds here that you have a chance to kind of give them some advice as they go forward in their careers and their lives. What would that one piece of advice be?
I always hate the one piece of advice because you know I want five. But if I'm going to give one, I would say whatever your first job is not going to be your dream job. That was true for me here even. I mean, initially what I was doing here was literally paperwork and WebEx meetings. It's not the sexiest of jobs, tasks, right? It's not possible that your first job will be your dream job. What's going to happen instead is that whatever you're given, do well at it. Whatever it is, work hard on it, try your best, be someone that people feel they can rely upon and want to tap on later, and it will pay off. Now that I've been doing this, you know, paperwork job for a few years, now I have higher managers in the product pulling me in to go do a bunch of other tasks because they've seen that I have skills and that I can be relied on and that I think in ways that they like and what have you. So whatever you're given, do well on it and good things will come from it. Or at the very least, that will be what you need in order to go push for the better things that you want later.
All right, Jordan. Hey, great piece of advice, Jordan. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. One of the ways we like to end these sessions, if we can make this sort of happen, if you can take us out of spotlight mode, and we got a screen of everybody, go ahead and snap on your cameras at this point, and let's go ahead and give Jordan a nice wave goodbye. You can see all our happy, smiling Cal Poly faces. Jordan, thank you so much for being here. And with that, that's going to take us into a break. And we will see you back on the other side. I think we'll go from 6, so 5:12. We'll be back at it. Okay, see you guys later.